Hi and welcome to Framed, a Let's Play with focus on cinematography. My name's Aubrey and I'm going to be your host. Today we're playing Uncharted 4, Chapter 21, Brother's Keeper. This is usually the part where I warn people not to watch out for spoilers, but we're pretty near the end of the game, so at this point I think you should probably be ready for it. I hope you enjoy as always, and let's get to it. So right away I want to get into this chapter and talk about the title of it. It's Brother's Keeper, which is a biblical reference, which keeps in theme with the other biblical references that have been presented throughout this game. This one is about the story of Cain and Abel, though. The story's pretty famous, so I think many people will probably know it, but just in case you don't, I want to explain it. Also, I think there are some specific lines that are interesting that I would like to read and point out and how they relate to Uncharted 4. So let's get into that. So Cain and Abel are brothers, and their parents are Adam and Eve. Cain's the firstborn, Abel's born right after him. Cain works the soil, Abel tends flocks. They both present sacrifices to God. Cain brings fruits from his soil, and Abel brings fat from the firstborn of his flock. God likes Abel's sacrifice more and is kind of like, so-so on Cain's. Cain gets pissed off that God doesn't like his sacrifice. And then God says, and I'm going to quote the Bible a little bit here, says, "Then the Lord said to Cain, 'Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it.'" Cain and Sam are similar, not just because they are both the older brothers, but also because they have this sin that is, quote, crouching at their door. It's so close to them, and they just can't seem to do the right thing. Sam rejects the opportunity to be saved by Nate, Sully, Elena, and instead chooses to go down this path of adventure and what one might consider his sin. He puts his desire, greed, and ambition before his own well-being and as well as his brother, because he knows, as Sully pointed out, that he called his bluff, that Nate's going to come after him. Continuing on from the story of Cain and Abel, Cain takes his brother Abel out to the field and out of jealousy kills him. God ends up asking Cain where his brother is, and Cain replies, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God, being God, though, knows what Cain did and ends up banishing him, making him a restless wanderer east of Eden for the rest of his days. Considering how Abel died because of his brother, the player is very stressed out if they're picking up on these symbols about Nate's fate at this point in the game. Not only would the player feel trepidation because of Cain and Abel reference, but also because there have been literal red flags throughout the game, as well as a bunch of memento mori, and the game is called A Thief's End. So it's pretty justifiable that people would be worried about Nate's fate. So Nate finds Sam's footprints headed away from what's behind him, and what is behind him is a sunset, and the sun sets, of course, in the west. And if we think back to the parable of Cain and Abel, God banished Cain to go be a restless wanderer east of Eden for the rest of his days. In this harbor, we see these two rocks by that sunset, and opposing those rocks was the shipwreck. And I think those rocks are kind of symbolic of Sully and Elena for Nate. They are his foundation, his rocks. They are what lead him to be good and moral and lead this just path. The shipwreck is, of course, Henry Avery and that treasure, and also the treasure hunting. So these two rocks are set in opposition of the treasure hunt. In case you thought we were done with Memento Mori, we're not. Nate, of course, finds another skeleton and peers into his journal, and we find out it's Burns' grandson. So Burns was the pirate captain, it's an optional thing to read these notes, but who killed his men on his ship because they didn't believe in his journey. They wanted to bail. They thought the treasure was getting the best of him, and he continues to do it because he wants to prove himself, and he wants to prove himself to Claire more than anything, which was his wife. And I think that is obviously very similar to Nate and Elena. And the last thing that he writes is for Claire to forgive him, and then we see this portrait of her. We have that last moment that he knows that he won't make it. And it's eerie because Nate is the one who draws. He's the one who keeps these journals, and he hopes, I'm sure right now, that Elena can forgive him for what he's doing, for going on this adventure, and we hope that he's going to be able to make it. So what else would Nate find on the ground at the other side but his brother's footsteps? We see that idiom, following in footsteps, played out visually here on the ground. Not only is Nate using this footsteps to track his brother, but also if we consider it, he's been following in his brother's footsteps his entire life. His whole identity as a Drake is because of his brother. He's been an adventurer and gone down this path because of his brother, and now it's coming to a head, basically. The way the light streams in with the rays right there in the leaves, and how Nathan just calls for Sam right there. It feels almost like, it feels very ethereal. So it feels in a way that Sam's a ghost. And if you think about it in a way, Sam kind of is a ghost. Because for many years to Nathan, he was dead. And now he gets his brother back. So he has this presence that was out of his life, and it comes back. And in a way, it's almost haunting him. It's drawing him back into this life of adventure. And I think that idea that Sam's a ghost is sort of a parallel to how Henry Avery is being presented in this game. So, of course, Henry Avery's been dead for many, many years, but it's this presence. He has all these statues. He's this larger-than-life figure. And we can tell, especially with when Nathan was really young, that Sam was this larger-than-life figure, this idol that he worshipped. And Sam, in a lot of ways, represented or respected Henry Avery, that freedom, that utter adventure, that he made his own fortune. He was a man from nothing that brought himself into something. It's everything that Sam idolizes. And now it's these things that Nathan has to reconcile with, these values he once held that he perhaps no longer does. He wants more of a stable life, but he also has to reconcile that he does love the adventure. I think the scene can kind of stumble into here is really powerful symbolically. So first we have the two waterfalls on the left, or right behind Nathan, in light and dark. And Nathan's in nearly silhouette, so he's almost completely dark. And on the top left, we see these three birds on the branch that are bright red, vibrant color. So the waterfall water is a continued theme through this game, and it's free falling. It's sort of without direction. It's this, usually waterfalls come from rivers, and these rivers run a path, but now it's free falling, and Nathan's kind of free falling at the moment, looking for his brother. And the birds are interesting, I think, because birds are really symbolic creatures, as we know, and we've seen through this game. In ancient Egypt, they actually are an incarnation of sorts of dead people's souls. Birds are symbolically important in many cultures throughout, and they have many different symbolisms. So I think in this context, these red birds are seen as, birds can often be messengers, and that they are a message for Nathan, Sam, and Rafe, perhaps, of warning or danger. I like the first time that the player is introduced to Avery's ship, you could say. The first time that, at least that we see it, is that Nathan is literally dangling by a thread, and it just gets that emotional note. It hits it perfectly visually here. So we're barely clinging on, Nathan is, and there's the water again in the background, free falling, and we are so close to doing that ourselves. Just if he lets go to this tenuous grasp he has, he is certain to fall to his death. But Nathan is Nathan, and he is able to somehow manage the situation. I love even the gameplay mechanics here, that to get through this porous rock you have to stab into. And granted, it's just kind of a new mechanic, it's a new thing to do. But I also think it's effective here story-wise, because we just see how we have to free fall to get to our next objective. It's sort of this letting us go into this chaos, into this entropy of sorts, and just gets that note that you're so close to losing it to the end, to just not being able to cling on to anything. It's just very tenuous, the whole situation, the rope, the porous rocks, the falling, and timing it just at the right moment. Everything is so uncertain at this point. We don't even know if Sam's alive. We don't know if Nathan's going to be able to stay alive in this situation. It's pretty dangerous heading head first into this island where Rafe, who is clearly unstable, has shown he's willing to do anything previously is. And it just adds this whole gameplay. I just like how it adds to it, both narratively, mechanic-wise, and visually. I really like how in this area, even the flora is not firmly rooted. It feels tenuous itself. The leaves are constantly falling. It's shaking in the wind. There's no really strongly rooted tree. It's just this green, lush flora that's dripping off the ceiling or coming off the precipice of a cliff. It's rare that we as a player can control the camera angle to go directly above Nathan or the subject. And in this way, it creates a God's eye view here. And now this is an optional one. It's not like in Marooned where we had that cut scene where Nathan falls after climbing and he hits rock bottom. Here it's sort of optional, but I think it's appropriate because we see Nathan and this fatalism that's a recurring theme in this game is shown again here because he is fated in a way to come to Henry Avery's shipwreck, to come to this final place. Ever since he was a kid, he has been on this journey, on this path to come here, and now it's finally about to happen. And whether his brother is there or not, all the other things are still up in the air. But a question we can't help but have is if Nathan was fated to come here in a way. The way the level is designed where that cliff juts out so you can have that overlook of Avery's ship is just so perfect for that God's eye view. I love that seemingly throwaway comment of, I guess this is my way down, which is literal, of course, but it's also that Nathan is descending once again into these lower morals, and here he is plunged into the water. It's almost baptismal in a way, I kind of feel like it is. Baptismal or not, it's a recurring theme in Uncharted 4 for Nathan to be thrust into this water and emerge. And he does it in the beginning, of course, when he's thrown off the boat, coming towards Libertalia with Sam. And again, in the beginning, when he is jumping off the cliff into the waters, escaping the Panama jail. This action could be interpreted as how Nathan gets through life, or just life in general. So whether it's a boat blowing up and throwing yourself into water and barely surviving, or sliding down a cliff, not knowing what the next turn will bring and somehow surviving and landing safely in water. It's like Nathan navigates these things to the best of his ability, but there's also there's so little control one actually has. You just have to kind of adjust and go through course. And you can see that in Nathan's life. He has a lot of skill in what he does, but there's a point of that there's not a lot of control. He doesn't get to decide. It's almost, again, that theme of fatalism.
We almost done here?
This is the last of them, ma'am.
Good. If we are it, we can catch up with the others.
Sam just stole our goddamn boat. He's headed for Avery's ship. Come on.
Let him. We're done.
We're done.
Most of my men are dead, Rafe. And those who aren't have already left.
Can you see that? The end is literally in sight.
That maniac pirate of yours has rigged this entire cave. I'm not setting foot on his ship.
Nadine, if you cut and run right now, the loss of all your men, everything that we've done, is for nothing.
We have millions in gold right here. I'd say that plus our lives is something.
No wonder so many of your men abandoned you.
Excuse me?
We're on the verge of making history here, and you're willing to just walk off with a pittance, a fraction of what Sam's gonna get from that boat.
If he can walk away from that ship alive, he can have it. Hell, I'd say he's earned it. God knows you didn't.
Now look, we can stand here and insult each other all day, or we can finish what it is that we've started.
Oh, we're finishing it all right.
Sorry, ma'am.
Thing about mercenaries, Nadine, their loyalty, it's bought. It's not earned. Now come on. Either we can finish this thing together, Or we can just end it right here.
Let's go make history.
Atta girl. By all means.
I want to point out that this is the second time that Nadine has had a gun held to her head. The first was by Sam in chapter 15 when he was threatening her and the secret was revealed that there was no Alcazar. And it ended up that Rafe being the top dog in that match. And now again, a mercenary held a gun to Nadine's head, and Rafe once again ended up getting what he wanted and going through with the treasure. So I'm pointing that out because it will be relevant perhaps next chapter. And talking about next chapter will be our final chapter. I am ending this episode for this week, and next week will be the grand finale. I really appreciate everyone who's watched so far and listened to me ramble on about cinematography in this game. And I hope you enjoy and watch definitely the next episode. I mean, if you've come this far, why not? Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.